Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our Big Ten football predictions today, and our next team started the season 3-1 last year, but lost their top two quarterbacks to injury and finished just 4-8. But they certainly have the talent to get back to a bowl game. They are the Maryland Terrapins. Maryland looked poised for a great season last year after starting off 3-1, including an upset win on the road at Texas, who they beat by 10 points. But then they lost their top two quarterbacks in Kasem Hill and Tyrell Pogrom, who both showed a lot of promise, but they both tore their ACLs, and there were a lot of other injuries on both sides of the ball for Maryland, and they went just at 4-8 on the season. They were actually 4-4 with 4 games left to play, so still had a shot for a bowl game, but 3 of those last 4 games were against Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, some of the top teams in the East last year. But this year they returned 13 starters, 8 on offense and 5 on defense, and if they can stay healthy, should be able to get back to a bowl game for the second time in 3 years. Now, I don't know who's going to start at quarterback. I believe it's going to be Kasem Hill, but regardless of who they start, they will be set as long as they can stay healthy. Hill and Pogrom, like I said, showed a lot of promise last year. Both dual-threat quarterbacks put up some good numbers in the limited time that they played, and I think if they can stay healthy, they will be good leaders for this Terrapins football team. They returned Ty Johnson at running back, a very solid running back, and their entire offensive line. So regardless of who's at quarterback, they should have protection in the pocket, and Ty Johnson will have a solid line to run behind there. So that's going to be really good for him. They do lose their star wide receiver in DJ Moore, a first-round draft pick in last year's NFL draft. But they should still be fine on the offensive side of the ball with 8 returning starters there, and then 5 on the defensive side of the ball, including Isaiah Davis and Tino Ellis. Ellis at cornerback and Davis at linebacker. So they should be okay on defense. That's my only concern, though. They might be a little thin through there, but still have some veterans at every position group. And this is a Maryland team that should be able to get back to 6, maybe even 7 wins. But the schedule does not favor them in the slightest. They open up against Texas, and in theory, they beat Texas on the road last year. So in theory, they should be able to beat Texas at home this year. And I was really, really borderline this year. Everybody's high on Texas this year, thinks it could be their year to win the Big 12. Maybe Oklahoma will be down. I don't know, but Texas does have a lot of solid starters coming back. 14, they have a solid quarterback, kind of like Maryland. Either way, at quarterback, they should be fine. They have Shane Buechele and Sam Ehlinger. So either way, Texas will be fine at quarterback, and they have a great head coach in Tom Herman. So yes, I think Texas could have a really solid year in the Big 12 this year. Like I said, I was back and forth on this, but Texas, revenge on their mind, should be a better team than they were last year, who actually won, I believe it was 7 or 8 games last year, including their bowl win. I'm going to give Maryland a opening weekend loss here to the Longhorns, and that was one that I really struggled with. I was back and forth on it for a long time, but I had to give the edge to the Longhorns, but I do expect this game to be close. At Bowling Green, I think they get a win over there. And then Temple, certainly not a team they want to overlook, considering they lost to Central Florida by 28 last season. But of course, Central Florida was one of the better teams in the entire nation last season. Temple could be Central Florida's biggest threat in the American Athletic Conference, but I think Maryland's going to get the job done over the Owls there, and I think they're going to get the job done against Minnesota too in their first Big Ten game of the season. Yes, Minnesota is coming off a bye week, and I like P.J. Fleck a lot as their head coach there, but they do have a bit of a quarterback situation, trying to figure out who's going to start there, and really, I think it's going to be a freshman quarterback, so they could have some struggle, especially this early on in the season, just in week 4. This Minnesota team should be improved, like Maryland, should get to a bowl game, I would think. I think P.J. Fleck has them pointing in the right direction, but with it being at home, I think Maryland's going to get a win. And if you look at the schedule, they're going to face some decent opponents in Temple and Texas before getting to Minnesota. So that's going to get them battle ready, battle tested going into this first Big Ten game. And then they have a bye week going into the Michigan game. And I really don't see any way that Maryland goes in to the Big House and wins this game. 17 returning starters for Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines. Shea Patterson, a solid dual-threat quarterback. Donovan Peoples-Jones, solid running backs, and a really, really good defense that only had 1 returning starter last year and returned 9 this year. This is going to be a much improved Michigan team around the board, and really they didn't have a bad year last year going 8-5. So this is a team that really could compete in the Big Ten East. It's on the road. I just don't see Maryland winning this game despite coming off a bye week. And then they get Rutgers after Michigan, a Rutgers team that in theory should be improved with 15 returning starters, have some chemistry going on offense there. This is Chris Ash's probably his best team with the Scarlet Knights, so maybe Rutgers can crack 5 or 6 wins there. I don't know, the schedule's brutal for them. Last year, though, Maryland lost by 7, and it was on the road, and that was one of their last 4 games as well. So had they won that game, they would have had 5 wins. All they had to do was upset Michigan, Penn State, or Michigan State. But they lost by 7 on the road to Rutgers this year. I think that Maryland is just going to be a better team than Rutgers, who a lot of people have projected to finish last in their division. I think Maryland gets a big-time home win over Rutgers here. Then at Iowa. Now, this is a very big game as well, but as we all know, Iowa, one of the toughest places to play, certainly in the Big Ten, potentially in the nation. Iowa having nearly beating Penn State last year, losing as time expired to the Nittany Lions. They beat Ohio State by 31. The year before, they beat Michigan, who was highly ranked, I think number 2 or number 3 in the country. So this is a solid place to play. It's a very difficult place to play, and Iowa is a solid team this year. I really like their quarterback, Nathan Stanley. I think he's going to put up some big numbers this year. I really don't think that Maryland's going to be able to go on the road and defeat the Hawkeyes at Kinnick Stadium. I just don't see that happening, so a loss there. And then Illinois, a team that is really, I don't expect a whole lot out of this year either. I have Lovie Smith on the hot seat because he has done absolutely nothing during his time at Illinois. And granted, part of that is due to the talent that he's had there. You have to build up. I think he's entering his 3rd or 4th year at Illinois. And a lot of this team for the Fighting Illini, they're young. They're very young. They started a lot of freshmen last year. They do return to 16 starters, but they're still mostly freshmen and sophomore. They don't have a lot of juniors and seniors on this team. So it's at home for Maryland. It's going to be a struggling Illinois team once again. It's going to be a rough season for them, and I think they get a win at home there. And if you look, they have 5 wins already going into those final 4 games of the season. And unfortunately for the Terrapins, this is exactly the kind of same scenario that their last 4 games were like last season. They have Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State in their 3 of their final 4 games of the season. Last year they had Rutgers and Michigan State, and Penn State. This year they got Indiana thrown in there with these 3 teams. And Indiana, Rutgers, I can kind of see some similarities there. Not exactly what you would call a powerhouse. So they start off against Michigan State, a team that Maryland on the road last year only lost to by 10. But this is going to be a dangerous Michigan State team, one that I think will fly under the radar. Not a lot of people's boards right now. 19 returning starters, solid quarterback in Brian Lewerke, L.J. Scott, solid wide receivers, and a very, very solid defense that only allowed 20 points per game last year. And I think will probably only allow less this year. It is at home for Maryland. If they can stay healthy, I can see them hanging in with Michigan State for most of this game. But I don't think they've beaten the Spartans, so I'm going to give them a loss here. Then at Indiana. This is really the big game because out of the games that I have marked down as losses right now, I don't see any that Maryland could potentially win. Maybe they could beat Texas at home, but I don't see them beating Michigan. I don't see them beating Iowa. I don't see them beating Michigan State. So this Indiana game is probably going to be the game that determines if they go to a bowl game or not. Maybe they pull off an upset somewhere, but right now they're at 5 wins. This is probably going to be the one that gets them to bowl eligibility. But unfortunately, I have Maryland losing this game to the Hoosiers. I think this is a Hoosiers team that, kind of like Maryland, if they can stay healthy, should be able to get to a bowl game, get to the 6-win mark, potentially 7. I like their quarterback in Brandon Dawkins, the transfer from Arizona. My only concern, kind of like Maryland, is their defense with 3 returning starters, but I see a lot of similarities between these teams. I think this is going to be a fairly even match. And for me, I'm going to give Indiana the edge because of home field advantage. It is on the road, and I'm just going to give Indiana a slight edge over the Terrapins here. But this is certainly a game that I could really see as a toss-up, one that could go either way. And so out of these losses right now, I think Indiana is certainly the one that Maryland could have a very solid chance at winning because I don't see them beating Ohio State, even though it is at home. Ohio State by far the favorite in the Big Ten East, and rightfully so. A lot of talent on both sides of the ball there. Sure, they lose J.T. Barrett, but have a solid running back in J.K. Dobbins, a solid quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, Nick Bosa all along the defensive line. This is an Ohio State team that will compete in the Big Ten and will compete nationally. So a loss for Maryland there. And then to close out the year at Penn State, that yes, did lose Saquon Barkley, yes, did lose Deshaun Hamilton, yes, did lose some defensive starters. But this is still a very solid Penn State team led by Trace McSorley and James Franklin, who is an excellent head coach and will have the Nittany Lions competing once again in the Big Ten East. It is on the road. I just don't see Maryland getting a win here in Happy Valley in the season finale. They will be hyped because if this holds, they know that they're going to be 1 win away from getting to a bowl game. I just don't see them getting the win against a tough Penn State team, so a loss there. And that's going to give them a 5-7 record on the year, which I know some will be disappointed with. It's an improvement from last year, but I think last year Maryland would have made a bowl game, maybe 6 or 7 wins had they stayed healthy. And that will certainly be the key for Maryland this year. If they can stay healthy, if Ty Johnson can stay healthy, if their wide receivers can stay healthy, and of course at least just get one quarterback to stay healthy, whether it's Hill or Pigrome, preferably both, Maryland might be able to compete in some of these games. I just don't see them pulling off many upsets. I don't see them beating Texas, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State. I mean, they're facing some of the toughest teams in the Big Ten, and all will be competing for the college football playoff. I think the only one game that I think Maryland could maybe pull off the upset in to get to a bowl game is this Indiana game right here on November 10th. So circle that one on your calendar, Maryland fans and Indiana fans, because that would benefit you to getting to a bowl game. This is the one that I think could go either way, but I'm giving Indiana the win because of home field advantage and maybe a slight edge on offense. But Maryland certainly has the talent, if they can stay healthy, to get to 6-6 or better. And DJ Jerkin's only third year there, so it'll be his second bowl game in 3 years at the helm of the Maryland program. Obviously doing a good job there, and I think it would have even been better last year. But this is going to be a much better team than that 4-8 record indicated from last season. So another decent year for Maryland. Hopefully they can get to that 6-6 record and get to their second bowl game in 3 years. So as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, on Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.